What if I told you that you're not tired of the world, you're tired of reacting to it? The pain you feel doesn't come from other people, but from the wounds they inflict on you. Carl Jung said that no one can hurt you without your unconscious permission. It's hard to hear, but it's liberating when you understand it. Because ultimately, it's not the other person's silence that destroys you. It's the noise they create within you. The truth is, you weren't taught how to protect yourself emotionally. He learned to please, to justify, to understand everyone, except himself. And that's why he lives drained, blaming himself for feeling too much, for expecting too much, for enduring too much. But what if I showed you that there's a way to be sensitive without being vulnerable, how to have empathy without losing yourself, how to remain whole even when the world tries to tear you apart? Today, through the lens of spirituality and Jungian depth psychology, you will discover 8 rules that change everything. 8 principles that teach you not to react impulsively, not to explain yourself out of fear, and not to let other people's chaos disturb your peace. You won't learn to be cold. You'll learn to be free, because true protection comes not from isolation, but from awareness. And when you awaken, no one else has the power to hurt you. There is a silent point within every human being where the soul, tired of surviving, begins to whisper for transformation. Emotional exhaustion doesn't appear overnight. It's the invisible accumulation of small internal betrayals. Those times you said, "Everything's fine," when it wasn't. When you swallowed words to maintain peace. When you distanced yourself from yourself to fit into others' expectations. It's a slow emptying of one's own essence, a disconnect that arises when the heart wants to stop, but the mind insists on continuing. Carl Jung would call this moment of symbolic rupture an invitation to awakening, because when everything seems to lose its meaning, it's the soul trying to rebuild something new. Authentic spirituality isn't about escaping pain, but about understanding what it wants to teach. The body begins to give signals: unsatisfied fatigue, unexplained irritability, sleep that's too light or too deep. It's the self calling attention, asking you to return within before the world suffocates you completely. Jung said that those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken. This phrase, despite being poetic, is also a psychological map. It means that as long as your gaze is fixed on the external, on approval, comparisons, results, your emotions will remain enslaved by circumstances. Awakening is not a mystical act reserved for monks. It is the simple and difficult gesture of sitting with yourself without trying to escape. It's when self-knowledge begins to replace haste, and inner control becomes more valuable than the need to control others. True spirituality doesn't anesthetize you, it reorganizes you. It forces you to face the shadow, those parts of you that still react, get irritated, sabotage themselves, and realize that they are not enemies but messengers. Everything you feel, including exhaustion, is an invitation to lost balance. When emotions seem to scream, it is the unconscious asking for a voice. And when you finally listen, something inside you begins to realign. Inner awakening doesn't come in flashes of insight, but with small, daily decisions. It's about turning off autopilot, taking a deep breath before responding, admitting you're tired, and allowing yourself to stop. It's about ceasing to romanticize suffering, but also not running away from it. Jung stated that the individuation process begins when the individual accepts that inner chaos is part of the journey, not a detour from it. The shadow only becomes light when it is seen with respect, not judgment. Therefore, the first step to never being emotionally hurt again is understanding that power lies not in being invulnerable, but in being whole. Emotional exhaustion is the gateway to this rediscovery, and only those who cross it discover the serenity that is independent of external circumstances. From here, the journey deepens. The learning begins about what it truly means to stop constantly explaining yourself. and how this simple gesture can change the entire structure of your mind. The need to explain oneself is one of the most subtle prisons of the modern ego. It's the almost automatic impulse to justify every step, every silence, every choice, as if personal worth depended on the understanding of others. Carl Jung called this ego inflation, when the individual tries to control how they are perceived, losing connection with their authentic self. Over-explaining is like trying to carry a mirror on your back, hoping the reflection pleases everyone. It's exhausting, it's useless, and at its core it's fear. Fear of being rejected, misunderstood, abandoned. But true spirituality teaches that self-knowledge begins when you understand that you don't need to convince anyone to exist in peace. People in the process of individuation learn to discern. Explaining is a choice, not an obligation. Emotional maturity arises when your inner coherence is worth more than any external approval. Excessive self-explanation is also a disguised way of asking permission to be who you are. And this, in practice, puts you in a position of emotional dependence. The mind develops the habit of seeking validation, and the heart gets used to apologizing for feeling. Jung said that the ego, when not observed, creates a facade personality, a mask that smiles even when the whole body wants to scream. And the more a person tries to justify themselves, the further they move away from the silent truth that sustains them. Imagine how many times you would explain yourself less if you simply trusted yourself more. When you know the reasons behind your choices, the world loses the power to confuse you. That is inner control. That is applied spirituality. It is the strength that is born when self-knowledge replaces the need for defense. You don't need to explain yourself when you live in peace with your own conscience. The practice is simple, yet transformative. Start by observing how many times a day you feel the urge to justify yourself. When you notice, take a deep breath and choose silence. Not everything needs an answer. Not every attack deserves an argument. When you remain silent out of conviction, the other person notices, and that silence carries more authority than 1,000 words. Emotionally mature people are not arrogant. They simply don't beg for understanding. They know that every unnecessary explanation is a subtle way of surrendering power. From the moment you stop constantly explaining yourself, your psychic energy reorganizes itself. Emotions stabilize, the mind clears, and the shadow begins to integrate naturally because you stop fighting against it. And then something changes in your tone, literally. That's the next step. Learning that your voice reveals much more than you imagine. There is a silent power hidden in the way someone speaks. It's not what is said that reveals the most, it's how it is said. Carl Jung believed that tone of voice is a direct passage between the conscious and the unconscious. It reveals wounds that the mouth does not confess. When someone speaks too loudly, it's not strength, it's disguised fear. When they speak too softly, it's not humility, it's self-denial. Each inflection carries undigested stories, emotions trapped in the body. Spirituality teaches that sound is living energy and that words carry frequencies. An aggressive voice wounds the surrounding field. A submissive voice erases presence, but a centered voice that creates peace. It is born when self-knowledge blends with inner control, when the heart and mind decide to breathe together before speaking. Whoever learns this realizes that the voice is more than communication. It is identity in motion. Some people spend fortunes on public speaking courses, trying to learn techniques to appear confident, when true vocal power comes from something much simpler: emotional integration. Jung said that every denied shadow eventually finds a way to express itself, and often it speaks for us. When the tone is laden with irony, impatience, or harshness, it's the shadow taking the microphone. The body vibrates what the soul feels. Therefore, before practicing your speech, learn to listen to the sound of your own silence. Listen to what you say when no one is around. Notice if your words comfort or hurt, if they build bridges or walls. This is spirituality applied to practical life. It's individuation in the most everyday form possible, transforming your own voice into a channel of consciousness. And when this happens, emotions cease to be chaotic waves and become instruments of inner harmony. Want a simple exercise? The next time you're about to talk to someone who makes you angry, pause for a second and pay attention to your breathing. Notice if it's shallow, if your jaw is tense. Notice the tone that's about to come out. Is it yours or the tone of the pain you carry? Sometimes the simple act of adjusting your tone saves a conversation, a relationship, an opportunity. Take care of your voice like you would a temple. What comes out of it is an extension of what vibrates within you. The voice is the mirror of the self. It reveals when the ego is in control and shows when the soul is present. Speaking consciously is a spiritual gesture because every word spoken from a place of presence heals, unites, and elevates. And when sound becomes sacred, so does silence. It is in the space between one word and another that the wisdom of not reacting resides, which leads us to the next step, learning not to respond immediately. Silence is the last territory of power that modern man has not yet learned to master. While most react impulsively, those who learn to pause become masters of themselves. Carl Jung said that consciousness is born in the interval between stimulus and response. It is there, in that small space of stillness, that the human being ceases to be merely a reflection of the world and becomes the architect of their own reality. When someone provokes you, it is not the other person who is being tested, it is your shadow. Every time you respond in the heat of the moment, you surrender inner control to the unconscious, and the price of that is high: regret, guilt, anxiety. Self-knowledge begins when you realize that not all silence is weakness. Sometimes it is a prayer. True spirituality manifests when calmness overcomes haste, and the pause becomes an invisible shield against the chaos of others. Think about how many situations would have ended differently if you had waited a little longer. A work argument, an impulsive message, a sharp reply that robbed you of peace for days. Pausing is what separates the wise from the reactive. Jung believed that the human mind works like a chemical laboratory. Emotions are reactions, and time is the element that transforms them. When you wait, you give space for the unconscious to settle, and what was anger becomes clarity. What was pain becomes insight. This is individuation in action, choosing to respond from the self, not the ego. And make no mistake, silence is not empty. It is fertile. In it, perceptions sprout that noise prevents from being born. Inner control is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over the moment in which it is expressed. And whoever masters their own time, masters their own destiny. Want to practice this? The next time someone provokes you, instead of responding, take 3 deep breaths and mentally say, "I observe." That's all. Observe the sensation rising, your body warming, your ego wanting to prove itself right, and then realize, all of this is just energy looking for an outlet. If you hold it for a few seconds, it changes form. This is emotional alchemy, transforming impulse into wisdom. People who learn not to respond immediately begin to radiate a strange strength. Others feel it, but can't explain it. It's the strength of someone who doesn't need to win arguments to overcome themselves. When you discover the power of pausing, you begin to see that even small daily irritations hide messages about your inner growth. And that's exactly where we go, learning not to let small things get to you. The small irritations of daily life are like invisible needles testing the thickness of your soul. Sometimes it's not the problem that's big, it's the wound that's still open. Carl Jung said that everything that irritates us in others can lead us to understand ourselves. The world is a psychological mirror, and what drives you crazy is trying to show you a part of yourself that hasn't yet been integrated. When someone interrupts you, perhaps it's your shadow asking you to learn to listen. When someone ignores you, perhaps it's your own fear of not being seen screaming for recognition. True self-knowledge begins when you transform these small provocations into instruments of healing. It's easy to meditate alone in silence. It's difficult to remain at peace when life decides to poke you, but it is precisely in this friction that spirituality becomes practical and inner control begins to flourish. Think about how many times your day has been ruined by a detail, a sideways glance, an unanswered message, a line that's too slow. It's as if the whole world is conspiring to test you, but in reality, it's your own psyche showing you where you still lack control. Jung called this projection, the unconscious act of seeing outside what we deny inside. When anger rises, the body heats up and the heart races, its emotional energy trying to escape. If you observe it without acting, it transforms. It's like a chemist waiting for the liquid to stop boiling before stirring. Irritation is the heat of the unconscious, and patience is the container that prevents the explosion. Therefore, every small setback is a disguised lesson about yourself. And the faster you learn, the less the world needs to teach you through pain. Want a simple exercise? Choose a day and observe what irritates you. Make a mental list of the little things that disturb your peace. Then at the end of the day, ask yourself, what does this reveal about me? Perhaps you'll realize that what bothers you isn't the other person. It's your need for control. Perhaps you'll see that what irritates you is also what you do, but don't realize. This kind of honesty is rare, but it transforms. Individuation is this: gathering projections and taking responsibility for your own reactions. When you stop blaming the world, you begin to build true peace, the kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's behavior. And it is from this serenity that true emotional strength is born, the ability to be strong without becoming cold. There is a vast difference between being cold and being firm. Coldness is a wall erected by fear. Firmness, a bridge built by awareness. Carl Jung said that when the ego doesn't know how to deal with pain, it protects itself by creating an emotional armor. And this armor, which seems like strength, is actually disguised paralysis. Spirituality doesn't ask you to become a stone, it teaches you to be a river. A river can cross mountains without losing its tenderness. It can circumvent rocks without ceasing to follow its course. So it is with firmness, malleable but unbreakable. Those who seek self-knowledge need to understand that maturing emotionally is not about eliminating feelings, but about integrating them. Inner control is not born from repression, but from dialogue with one's own heart. When you deny your emotions, they take revenge in silence. When you embrace them, they become your allies. Many confuse maturity with detachment, as if feeling less were a sign of strength. But Jung warned, everything repressed in the unconscious returns multiplied. The person who tries not to feel anger one day explodes. The one who avoids sadness plunges into apathy. The one who pretends not to need anyone becomes a hostage to loneliness. Steadfastness is different. It's looking at the emotion and saying, "I see you," but not letting it drive the car. It's allowing fear to warn you without letting it decide. It's letting anger point out limits without letting it hurt. Practical spirituality is exactly that: cooperation with what you feel, not denial. Steadfastness is born from the courage to remain present amidst chaos. It doesn't feign control. It builds it step by step with lucidity and presence, and the more awareness, the less rigidity. The flexible mind is the most stable. Want a simple example? Imagine someone who criticizes you unfairly. Coldness ignores and shuts down. Fragility defends and exalts itself. Firmness simply listens, evaluates, and chooses what deserves a response. It's the middle ground between ice and fire, the equilibrium point of a mature soul. Emotionally firm people don't hold grudges, nor do they get lost in dramas. They breathe, analyze, and move on. They are like ancient trees. The wind shakes them, but doesn't knock them down. This is the essence of individuation, being whole but not hardened. The shadow doesn't disappear, but it loses its power to dominate. When you discover this, you realize you no longer need the validation of others to feel stable. And that's exactly the next step, seeking respect, not approval, because respect is born from inner truth, while validation dies in dependence on applause. Validation is the most widely accepted vice in the modern world. Disguised as kindness, it feeds the ego while emptying the soul. Carl Jung said that every time a person lives only for the image they project, their soul begins to sicken. And that's what we see every day. People tired of being what others expect, but afraid of disappointing them. Seeking approval is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Authentic spirituality begins when you understand that you don't need to be understood to be true. Self-knowledge shows you that external validation is as fragile as glass, and that respect is born from coherent silence. Individuation at this point is the courage to disappoint others so as not to betray oneself. It is an act of loyalty to one's own essence. Because those who mold themselves too much to fit in end up getting lost in the process. Some people confuse respect with sympathy, but they are distinct things. Sympathy comes easily, respect is earned. Sympathy depends on mood, respect on consistency. Jung observed that the man who seeks to be loved by all becomes a servant of the persona, that social mask that smiles even when the heart screams. But the man who seeks respect lives in peace with his shadows. He knows that being understood is a bonus, not an obligation. He doesn't mince words to please, but speaks with integrity. Such people don't shout, don't beg, don't over-explain. They simply live with coherence, and coherence is magnetic. Spirituality is not a stage for approval. It is an arena of truth. And in that arena, the one who remains standing is not the most loved, but the most authentic. Respect is the natural echo of silent integrity. Practicing this is simple, but it requires courage. Before acting, ask yourself, is this aligned with who I truly am? And not, what will others think? The difference between these questions defines the course of your life. When you begin to act for the first reason, the world may judge you, but your soul sleeps in peace. And believe me, the respect that comes from authenticity lasts longer than any momentary applause. It doesn't dissolve with time because it doesn't depend on anyone's gaze. It's the fruit of the congruence between what you think, feel, and do. And when this alignment happens, a new form of freedom is born, one that no one can take away from you. This is the ground where true emotional mastery flourishes, the point where the unconscious ceases to be an enemy and becomes a silent ally on your path. Emotional mastery is not a trophy to be won, it's an art to be practiced. Carl Jung said that until you become conscious, the unconscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is one of the hardest and most liberating truths of depth psychology. There is no shortcut to consciousness. You need to return to yourself every day, like someone cleaning the mirror of the soul, to see the reflection more clearly. Spirituality is discipline, not escape. It's waking up, taking a deep breath, and observing what moves you from within. Anger, fear, anxiety, love. Not to judge, but to understand. Self-knowledge is the thread that sews shadow and light into the same fabric, and inner control is the stitching that holds everything together when the world seems to fall apart. Mastering emotions is not about suffocating them, it's about learning to converse with them. The unconscious is like a deep sea, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but always alive. And those who learn to navigate it discover that the secret is not to fight against the waves, but to understand the rhythm. Emotional mastery is this: perceiving the current, adjusting the sail, and continuing. Each day, a new lesson. With each mistake, an opportunity to integrate what was still hidden. Jung saw the human being as a work in constant construction, and emotions as the bricks of individuation. They are what show where structure is still lacking. When you feel fear, it is the self asking for presence. When you feel anger, it is the shadow asking for a voice. When you feel sadness, it is the unconscious asking for acceptance. Ignoring this is distancing yourself from yourself. Listening is evolving. It is this daily dialogue that transforms chaos into consciousness and reaction into wisdom. Don't expect perfection, expect progress. Emotional mastery is strengthened in the very place where you've stumbled before. It's not built in calm days, but in storms, when everything within you wants to react, and yet you choose to breathe. That choice is the true human miracle. It's when the ego falls silent and the self takes command. Real spirituality doesn't promise you the absence of pain, but presence amidst it. And when that presence becomes a habit, the soul matures. The world remains the same, but you don't. And at that point, what once hurt you now only teaches you. What once dominated you now serves you. This is what Jung called integration, the soul in harmony with its own mystery. And it is from this awareness that the cycle is completed, preparing the ground for the introduction that awakens those who still sleep. Ultimately, it all comes down to one type of courage, the courage to take responsibility for yourself. Carl Jung said that a man's greatest victory is to gain mastery over his own mind. And that's what these 8 rules give you. Tools to stop being a slave to your emotions and start using them as a compass. The world will not stop testing you. People won't change just because you've changed. But the difference is that now you are aware. And conscience is the true shield. When you learn to observe instead of react, to breathe instead of exploding, everything changes. Life goes on as usual, but your perspective matures. That comment that would have hurt you before now goes unnoticed. That criticism that used to make you insecure is now transforming into self-confidence. Inner control is not a gift, it's a habit, and the more you practice, the freer you become. So, from today onward, choose silence over reaction. Choose respect over approval. Choose firmness instead of coldness. Apply what you've learned here, one day at a time. And you'll realize that things stop affecting you when you stop neglecting yourself. If this video helped you see something that was previously invisible, leave your comment below. I want to know which of these rules stood out to you the most. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey with me. Because true power lies not in controlling the world, but in mastering oneself.